lot of people, when they start their musical journey, they might think they have taste, or they might think something is good when it's actually dog shit. That was basically the genesis of my production career. It was because I didn't have other people to make music with, so I had to make the music myself. I would go to the functions, I'd go to temple, and my mom would have me play the violin in front of everybody. They wanted me to be as Bengali as possible, and so I was mildly cut off from American pop culture. At Coachella, there were 6 South Asian artists performing. I just thought it was funny that me and Joy Crooks felt a little bit like footnotes. I was like, this should be a bigger deal. Day of show, I wake up to a text. He's like, hey man, Pri wants to come. And I was like, holy shit, dude, like Priyanka Chopra might come to the show. Anytime I say that I'm Bangladeshi, the video will just perform better. It's very interesting. So in that regard, it's almost hard not to talk about it. He's like, if you sell 25 tickets, you'll be paid, but if you sell anything less, like, we're not gonna pay you. And I was like, all right, bet. I did not sell 25 tickets.
Today, my guest is electronic artist, DJ, and music producer, Jai Wolf. You probably know him from his breakout track, Indian Summer, a song that became a festival anthem and put his sound on the global map. Over the years, Jai Wolf has performed on some of the biggest stages in the world, including Coachella, Lollapalooza, and major headline tours across the United States. As a Bengali American, he's been one of the first DJs from the diaspora to truly break through and tour North America at scale. In today's conversation, we talk about that exact journey, the early breakthroughs, the challenges, and what it took to build a mainstream career in electronic music. Hope you enjoyed the episode, and if you want to see more conversations like this, please subscribe. Just to like take it back a little bit about who you are and what your upbringing is and everything like that. Can you just tell me like a little bit about like your childhood, where you grew up? Like, do you have siblings? You know, what was like?
I'm Jai Wolf. I'm Sajeeb, or Sajeeb is my real name, and I'm from Bangladesh. I was born in Bangladesh, and my parents and I immigrated here in the 90s. I grew up first in Illinois in a random small town called Carbondale. Then I moved to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania in the late 90s. And then I finally moved to New York in 2005. And I've been in New York for the last 18 years. I just moved to LA this year. So I'm a West Coast boy now, but I'm in my heart, I'm an East Coast boy. Growing up, I was very sheltered. My mom was very afraid of me losing my Bengali heritage, and I had quote unquote strict parents growing up. They're very relaxed and chill now. They're very supportive of what I do, but I would say that they were quite strict growing up. They wanted me to be as Bengali as possible, and so I was mildly cut off from American pop culture. So I wasn't aware of all the things that were happening in the 90s. I feel like I missed out on a lot of cultural cornerstones of the 90s, like Britney Spears or NSYNC, Backstreet Boys, all that stuff. Friends, like I never watched Friends or anything like that. I basically was sheltered for a really long time. And then
what would you watch then?
What would I watch? I mean, I think I watched PBS for way too long. You know, I was watching Arthur, and you ever see Zoom?
Yeah.
You remember Zoom? Zoom? I was really into Zoom. I didn't really have like cable or anything either, so I wasn't watching like Nickelodeon or Cartoon Network. I was like on the educational TV mode, you know, the whole time. On the music side, I picked up the violin when I was 5 years old. I was doing solo repertoire and orchestra for a really long time. And my mom, like on the side, she would do like Bengali notation for me. So I would play like Bengali classical music on the violin. I would go to the functions, I'd go to temple, and my mom would have me play the violin in front of everybody. I would play like classical Bengali folk songs. There's 2 major poets from Bangladesh, Rabindranath Tagore and Ghazi Islam, I believe. I'm forgetting his middle name, but they both have very popular poetry that was then transcribed into music and given musical melodies. It's like if someone were to give melodies to like a Shakespeare sonnet. And then from there, my mom would transcribe these folk songs into Western notation so I could play them on the violin. As immigrant parents do with their kids, they like to show them off. And so we would be at like if my mom would host a dinner, like a function kind of thing, and people would come over, my mom would have me play violin for everyone, or if we were at temple, I would play violin. I think there'd be like a talent show kind of portion, maybe there'd be some dancing and whatnot, but yeah, that was kind of like my thing for a very long time. And as I became a teenager, I felt like the pop culture bubble was slowly opening because, you know, you're in school and people are talking about all these things. And for me, I was like, oh, I didn't realize there was this larger world outside of my little orchestra, Vivaldi, Bengali, you know, music bubble. When I moved from Pittsburgh to New York, my friend gave me a parting gift. It was a Green Day CD. It was American Idiot, 2005. And that CD like got me through that move because moving as like a teenager was very tough. I was like a new kid in high school and everything in New York. And so having this like angsty music like really like fed my soul in a way when I was a 13-year-old teenage boy. And so that American Idiot CD sort of like opened the gateway into bands like Fall Out Boy, Panic at the Disco, Blink-182, and that led me to picking up the guitar in high school. And so suddenly I was like the orchestra kid, like playing guitar and stuff and teaching myself how to play power chords and all these different songs. And I would make all these like YouTube covers. They like, you can actually still find them on YouTube. I have a YouTube channel from 2006. Around that time, my whole thing was like, oh, I'd love to be in a band. I want to be in a band. I want to make music like Fall Out Boy. But I couldn't really find other bandmates. So what I ended up doing was I learned how to like produce all the music myself on GarageBand. So I learned like, all right, well, a song needs like guitar and bass and drums and vocals. So I learned how to like produce drums and program them. And that was basically the genesis of my production career. It was because I didn't have other people to make music with. So I had to make the music myself. This was 2009 when I first picked up like GarageBand. I was 17 years old. Yeah, that was the start of a very long journey.
Yeah. Did you like, was it just trial and error, or was YouTube like that big yet where like tutorials were online? Because nowadays, like if you want to produce something,
you could learn.
First place people are going is like YouTube.
YouTube, yeah. So there's such a wealth of information on the internet now that if you're a kid, you could learn to produce and make music so quickly. You could be an Ableton wizard at 14, 15 years old. For me, it was all trial and error. I was making the shittiest beats, the shittiest songs for such a long time. And I didn't have a lot of self-awareness. I think a lot of people, when they start their musical journey, they might think they have taste or they might think something is good when it's actually dog shit. And so I was kind of stuck there for a really long time where I was trying to teach myself how to make good music. And I tried a myriad of different things. I tried being my own frontman, the way Owl City would kind of like sing and also make his own music. And at some point I had to like really confront with myself that I was not a singer. I had musical ability, but there was a ceiling to that. And I didn't know how to like go beyond that. I had to like really pivot myself. And that's kind of how DJing sort of became a thing, because if I wasn't going to sing, I was like, well, let me take like an acapella off the internet and make something around that. And that's remixing, when you take something existing and you build something new around it. So I would find like a Lady Gaga acapella or a Kid Cudi acapella, and I would just remix that. And that's kind of how I slowly transitioned into like DJ EDM world.
Yeah. So you're producing all these songs, you're taking acapellas, songs are starting to sound good slowly, right? The transition between producing and DJing, like when did that happen? Like when were you like, yo, I think I'm gonna play at some events or?
Yeah, that's a good question, because the beginning of my dream was I want to be in a band. That was like the mission statement. And then I was like, all right, I'm going to be my own one-man band kind of thing. And I think that concept didn't really exist yet. Like today, we have incredible electronic artists like Flume. It's just one guy on stage. We have artists like Porter Robinson, who used to run his show as like one person on stage. And that archetype didn't really exist in 2009, 2010. What was becoming super popular at the time was European DJs coming from Europe to America and blowing up. You had David Guetta, Alesso, Swedish House Mafia, Avicii. And I was kind of watching that scene and trying to understand like what was going on. I was trying to understand what DJing was. And DJing and producing are two completely different things. Producing is like creating a song, programming the drums, writing the chords, songwriting, like doing all that stuff together and assembling a song on like a computer, right? DJing is like you're basically curating music. You're playing one song. It could be yours, could be someone else's. You're seamlessly transitioning from song A to song B, and then you just do that a bunch of times for an hour, right? That's DJing.
Yeah.
And so DJing comes in so many different forms. I think the form that really penetrated America at that time was like maximalist EDM. You know, you would have just progressive house music being kind of the hottest thing in 2010 to 2012, 13, right? So I was trying to find myself in that space of like what was really attractive to me. And to me, it was like Skrillex. Like Skrillex was the coolest thing to me in 2011. Everything he was doing sort of bridged the gap between that Warped Tour, you know, From First to Last, which was his old band, Fall Out Boy kind of world with the more harder electronic stuff. So I use Skrillex as somewhat of like my new archetype of what I wanted to be. And this was 10 years ago. I've been doing Jywolf for 10 years now. I started in 2014, and I want to say Skrillex was probably like one of my biggest idols at that time.
Yeah. What was your first gig like then?
First gig, okay, so before I was doing Jywolf, I had a project called No Pets Allowed, and you can still find some of that stuff on YouTube and online and whatnot. And No Pets Allowed was essentially a remix slash mashup vehicle where I would make random remixes or I would do mashups. I'd be like, what if we take Taylor Swift and put her over David Guetta?
Yeah.
Stuff like that. My first few gigs as No Pets Allowed were just like opening gigs in New York City. I would play at, there's a venue called Webster Hall, and there's a kind of a small side room in the basement called The Studio. So it'd be called The Studio at Webster Hall. I think my first show ever as No Pets Allowed was October 2012, about 2 years before I started Jywolf. And I was just opening for another artist. I remember his manager had me sell like, he's like, if you sell 25 tickets, you'll be paid. But if you sell anything less, like, we're not going to pay you. And I was like, all right, bet. I did not sell 25 tickets. But yeah, that was one of my first DJ gigs. I played like I went to NYU in New York, and I remember I played like a spring formal and just DJ'd for like 3 hours. So I would do stuff like that. Those were some of my first like local gigs, you know?
Yeah. Damn, and you would source out like the Webster Hall gig, like you would reach out to the artist or their manager and be like, hey man, can I open for you?
Yeah,
Like,
it was very much like, you know, like the blog scene was super popular back then. So I felt like I had accrued a collection of emails between bloggers and managers, and I tried to like reach out even to local promoters. I'd be like, oh, I see Adventure Club is coming to town. I'd love to open for them. I'd email like the bookers at Webster Hall, and sometimes they would respond, sometimes they wouldn't, sometimes they would just pass on you. But yeah, it's just, that's kind of the game you have to play. It doesn't matter what city you live in, you have to kind of understand your local scene and how everything works, and you have to shoot your shot no matter what.
Yeah. So No Pets Allowed was your first gig.
Yeah.
When did you start like slowly gaining some sort of respect from like peers and people in the industry? Maybe people started reaching out to you now. Like, when did that moment happen and you figured out this name, Jywolf? Like, what was the culmination of that?
I think towards the end of 2013, I felt like No Pets Allowed was too jokey of a name, and I wanted to get serious with pursuing music. I had just left university and I was living at my parents', and I thought long and hard about like what I'd want to do musically, and just I try to like look into the future. The thing I told myself was like, when I'm 30, I should be proud of the name I have. And I think the name No Pets Allowed, I was like, oh, if I'm 30, I feel like I might not still vibe with that name. I should pick a different name. So I did some brainstorming. I was like, all right, maybe I'll pick a name that is reflective of my ethnicity maybe. And I made like a whole list. But before I got to the ethnicity thing, I'm telling the story a little badly, but okay, the first name I came up with was Direwolf, because I was watching Game of Thrones at the time, and I was a big Game of Thrones fan.
Yeah.
Did not end well, but at the time, it was like season 3. I was like, let me be Direwolf, which is an animal from the show. I pitched that to my team, and my managers were like, it sounds like a metal band. So I went back to the drawing board. I was like, I want to have more I want to have a name that reflects my ethnicity a bit more. Like when you read it, you might guess it's like a South Asian person. So I looked up top 10 Indian baby names, and I picked Jai, which I know is Jay. I know a lot of Indian people might be watching this being like, it's actually Jay. They're not wrong. I personally don't care how you say it, Jai Wolf, Jay Wolf. I picked Jai as the phonetic way to say it because it felt different from like, we got Jay-Z, Jay Sean, J. Cole, a lot of J names. So I was like, I'm going to be Jai. So Jai plus Dire Wolf is Jai Wolf. And so I took all the handles. I made sure like there's never like any artist uploading music under Jai Wolf. The only thing that showed up was like a lady from Oklahoma with a mugshot. She was arrested for oxy or drugs or whatever. And like back then in 2014, 13, if you looked up Jai Wolf, her face would show up. That would be the only thing.
Wow, so you picked this name. You already had a team by this point.
I was working with someone I went to high school with at that time and his business partner. They saw what was happening with No Pets Allowed, and there was not crazy traction, but it was like the SoundCloud scene. There was something happening there, and they were just kind of helping me out at that time. So.
Yeah, like you were getting a lot of streams on SoundCloud. You'd upload to blogs.
Not even that. Lot of streams is so funny because subjectively compared to now, no, nothing. Not even a drop in the bucket, you know. But like it felt like there was just something fun and interesting happening. And again, EDM was this fresh new thing in America. So they saw what I was doing and they were just like, yeah, let's see what we can do with this.
Got it. So you have this new name, Jai Wolf.
Mm-hmm.
Now, how do you get shows? How do you like make a name for yourself?
Back then, like, you know, remixing was a really good way to kind of get your name out, where you take an existing material and transform it into something new. But the thing that would really get eyes on you is if you could write brand new original music, right? And so it was like a rite of passage for a lot of DJs and producers going from, let's say, DJing to doing mashups to remixes to writing original music. That was kind of like the path you would follow. It was like the inevitability is you have to learn how to compose a song, which I was already doing before Jai Wolf, before No Pets Allowed. Because that's where my journey had started. It was writing music with the mission of wanting to be in a band. So I was doing the remixes for a long time. Even the early days of Jai Wolf, I was doing remixes. It wasn't until I remixed a Skrillex song that kind of got the attention of Skrillex and his team at Owlsla, which was his record label. Skrillex started playing my remix of his song, Ease My Mind, summer of 2014, about 2 months after I launched Jai Wolf, which is really crazy to think about. The third thing I made under Jai Wolf was being played by Skrillex at the time. The first time he played it was at Glastonbury in 2014. And I remember I was living in my parents' basement, but on the weekends I would still take the train to go to New York to go out to the bars and whatnot. I'm 22, 23 years old. That's what you do when you're 22, 23. And I remember this is before Uber. So I'm like in like a taxi going to the train station.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at my phone and people like someone on Reddit or something was saying like, oh, like he played a new Ease My Mind remix, like we haven't heard this one, and like people are saying like, oh, it's Jai Wolf's remix. I think information was harder to dig for back then. Like now I think I would know pretty quickly if that was true or not. I think I had to wait like a full day to confirm.
Yeah.
And yeah, I feel like the next day there was like video footage of it that came out, and it was like so unreal that he had like, you know, gotten the remix and played it out and everything. And that whole summer, he was playing it out at every festival. Like all the like Diplo used to have a festival called Mad Decent Block Party, and he would play it at those shows. He would play it at like, yeah, he played it at so many different places. It was so unreal. And I think that led to a lot of more remix opportunities. I got to do a remix for Alesso, I did a remix for Odessa, and that's kind of how Indian Summer happened, because after I did the remix for Odessa, who at that time were just like a very, very small indie electronic act. They're not like the huge arena stadium act that they are today in 2024. They were just playing rooms like Bowery Ballroom in New York or the El Rey here in LA. I did a remix for their song Say My Name, and when I first played my first show in Seattle in a venue called Q Nightclub, Harrison from Odessa reached out to me to grab a drink before the show, and he told me, he was like, we're starting a record label this year. We'd love for you to like submit a song. If you have any, like, please send it over. And so I basically went to work and I tried a bunch of different beats, and one of the beats was Indian Summer. And I will never forget, I always thought Indian Summer was such a strange song. It just, now it has this weight and larger context to it because it has taken a life of its own. But at the time, in 2015, I was like, this is such a weird song. Like, who is going to vibe to this? Like, yeah, I didn't have a lot of personal faith in it, but my team did and Odessa did, and they signed it that summer. It was their third song that they had ever signed to their label, and it just took a life of its own after that.
Yeah, that song till this day is probably one of the craziest songs. People go nuts, huh?
Yeah, it's very surreal for sure.
Yeah. So what were your parents saying during this whole time? Because there was probably a period where like you were in the middle of college and maybe finding yourself.
Yeah.
And coming from a protected like Bengali family. What was your mom saying? What were your parents saying?
It's funny because I actually low-key didn't really finish college. Like, I did 4 years and I got all my credits, but I went to a school that required something called a colloquium, which is kind of like a presentation you give in front of like your advisor and 2 other professors, and I just never completed that. I just got a little lazy and forgot to sign up for it, and so I had to move back home. I'm living in my parents' basement, and what was nice is that, being from a musical family and a family and culture that really supports the arts, they wanted to give me a chance. They were like, let's see what happens in a year. That was 2013. So I'm living in their basement. I'm just making all this music, and the Skrillex stuff happened 1 year later after I started Jai Wolf, and then Indian Summer happened 2 years later in 2015. And I think for a long time they didn't really understand what I was doing. I also think that like explaining electronic music or DJing to someone who has no context of what that means is really difficult to do, because it's, to the layman, it's like, what are you doing? You're just pressing buttons. Like, what is this? So that, I think, is hard to wrap a lot of people's brains around, especially immigrant parents. But they were super supportive. They wanted to see me happy. They wanted to see like what I could do. I told myself that I would take my parents to a show when it's my first headlining hometown sold out show.
Yeah.
So that was later that summer in 2015, about a month after Indian Summer had come out. I played at a venue called Rough Trade in New York. It's about maybe 300 people. It's a small venue, but it's kind of like a starter venue, right? And yeah, they came and it was very exciting. Like, a lot of my high school friends came, a lot of my college friends came. That was kind of like the starting point, the genesis of like Jai Wolf, basically. It was like Indian Summer, June 15, and then Rough Trade, July 2015. That was just the turning point of it all.
Yeah, that's insane. I saw you in New York somewhere where I didn't know like who I was going to see.
Yeah.
I was just going with a bunch of my friends.
Got it, okay.
And as soon as I heard like the Indian Summer song and like, I mean, a bunch of the other songs too, it was like, I was one of those people where like, if I went to the concert, I would have an insane blast, like an EDM concert or like a dance music concert or anything like that. But I personally wouldn't like listen to the music like on my own. But I think hearing Indian Summer, knowing that it was like, yo, this is someone that's South Asian or someone that's brown, I think that definitely like gave me some sort of like, I don't know, that like euphoric feeling, that like confidence or something like that, right? Because back then, I don't know how many artists like that like really existed.
Almost none.
Yeah.
Like, I know there was, we had, Samir and Young the Giant, that was happening in the 2010s. And then Zayn from One Direction, of course, but not too much beyond that, to be honest. There was like, that's kind of it. At that time, in like 2015, it was, compared to now, where there's so many incredible artists, it was not like that 10 years ago. Yeah.
Obviously, last year I came to the Club Babu tour, and you did like some 60 some cities, right? How many cities did you do in those?
Yeah, it was a Blue Babu tour. It was 40 cities across the states. Yeah.
Yeah. How did you like build up such a like touring reputation around the country? Because a lot of artists tour, but like to do that many cities, go to all these rural different areas.
Yeah.
It's a huge like you said, like probably took you years to get to that point.
Yeah.
But how does that work? Like, how can, if someone else is watching and they're like, hey, I want to be a DJ, I want to produce music, I want to tour around the world, how can they do it, and how did you do it?
Yeah, I mean, it's such a good question, especially now, like, I think today's scene is so interesting because a lot of these South Asian kids, it's this brand new generation of kids, and I feel like a lot of the attention span and context is sometimes missing. Like, they're not gonna know, like, what I was doing 10 years ago. They're not going to see maybe the 10 years that led to what you saw last year.
Yeah.
I also think that we live in a time where visibly maybe all they know is like the Jay Seans, the Zanes, the Diljit Dosanjh. They'll see like the mega A-list and how that operates, but you don't really see the journey in between or what it's like to be somewhere in the middle and touring like that.
Yeah.
So for me, because I've been doing this for such a long time. It really is like a 10-year long road. It doesn't none of that stuff happens overnight. So after Indian Summer came out, after I did that show, I had my managers, I had an agent, and they were really smart with how they booked me throughout my entire career. So with Indian Summer, I was able to tour. I was able to be slotted at certain festivals. I played the Do-Lab stage at Coachella that same year in 2015. After that, off the success of Indian Summer, I was able to play rooms like the Roxy in LA. We did 3 nights. In New York, we did Bowery Ballroom and Music Hall of Williamsburg. And then when I had an EP that came out at the end of 2016, I did my first bus tour. And at that time, Spotify was so brand new. It was about 4 or 5 years old. But Indian Summer was a song that had really blown up on both SoundCloud and the very early days of Spotify.
Yeah.
And with the EP coming out, they were able to book my first headline bus tour in 2016. And so at that point, I was doing like Terminal 5 in New York. I did the Novo here in LA. And that was roughly 25 or 30 dates. Then I kept releasing music. I was working on my debut album. I put out my debut album in 2019 and did another tour for that. We did Terminal 5 again in New York, but then we did the Shrine here in LA. And that was also 30-ish dates.
Wow.
And we kind of did mix of A markets, which are like, New York, LA, Denver, Chicago, San Francisco, Seattle. We also did some B markets, something like Eugene, Oregon, Boise, Idaho. So we'd always try to hit like the smaller cities, which are always so much fun. Like I've played Boise, Idaho 4 times. I played the same exact venue. It's hard to like grow out there because the next venue is like an arena.
Yeah.
So I've played the same like 750 cap room 4 times. Each time is so fun because those kids, like they're not getting like shows as much as like New York or LA. So playing in a city like Salt Lake City or Boise is always such a good time. But yeah, it takes 10 years before you can do something like what you saw last year at the Greek in LA,
Yeah, and how important is like having an agent or a manager is obviously with you throughout the process, but an agent is probably just for booking the shows and kind of establishing you in the market. Like how does that work?
Yeah, I mean, usually like if you have some buzz online, like back then it was like through SoundCloud or Hype Machine. You would be picked up by an agency. There's 4 or 5 big ones. There's UTA, CAA, WME, Wasserman. And so you can get picked up by an agent. They usually kind of figure out your booking schedule for you. And it's going to vary artist to artist. I know like for someone like Diljit, like, he's going to sign like a Live Nation deal and do like an arena tour through that. And if you're just starting off, it might be your manager who's kind of helping you out, reaching out to local venues to book shows. But yeah, it just depends. I think usually like if you have buzz online, now the equivalent of having buzz on SoundCloud is having buzz on TikTok.
Yeah.
Usually these people, the pieces eventually fall into place. Eventually you do get like your team set up, manager, lawyer, agent, business manager, all that stuff. Usually they'll find you.
Yeah. Yeah, and the agent is usually the one that's like
doing all the booking and everything, yeah.
All the bookings and stuff. That's insane.
Yeah.
30 city shows like back then to like, and then you're just constantly building.
Yeah.
And then now you did like 60 some odd
Yeah,
shows.
it's not, we don't do it too frequently. Like if you look at when we did these tours, like my first one was 16.
Yeah.
Then it was 3 years later in 19, and then 4 years later in 23. So we take some time in between. We try to grow. We try to do different things. Like even this year, like we did some like club shows. So like last year's tour was Blue Babu Live. It's like this maximalist live show. It's only my own music. There's production and lights and whatnot. And then this year we're like, let's play some smaller rooms. Let's like, you know, do these fun DJ sets, not think too much about the production, make it feel like a party. Like it's fun to kind of like scale things down and have fans like right in front of your face and try something new. The touring model just changes a lot, I feel. So you want to like take your time with it. Even like Tyler the Creator, he goes like 2 or 3 years between albums, and then, you know, he's not touring yearly.
Yeah.
He like has space in between. Some people tour yearly. It's like Taylor Swift or something like that, you know.
Yeah.
But like most artists have gaps between their big tours.
Yeah. So that's touring, and then looking at production of the actual tour itself. I think there was one year I saw on your story, you were personally making visuals on your computer.
Yeah.
And then, you know, at many of your shows, you're like playing different instruments around you. And like there's this setup of like lights, and you're like elevated up, like, you know, how, like, do you come up with these ideas? Do you have a team? Like, how important is like the production aspect of the tour? Because you're doing so many shows and so many people are coming, and maybe you're trying to build that like reputation. People need to feel like it's a good show. Like, well, what I love about the electronic world is that the production game is just so much fun, and I've been super lucky to have been able to tour with artists like Odessa, artists like Porter Robinson, where I've been immersed in their world, where I can see how they run their productions. And so when it comes time for us to do our own show, be it my first tour in 2016 or my tour last year in 23, I try to make the experience feel like unique to my world, basically. I work with an amazing team of both visual designers and lighting directors to kind of create the show. We sit down and have a chat of like what the general direction is of what I'm looking for, and like kind of come up with like rules and whatnot of how everything is meant to look like. It's funny because I haven't thought about it in so long, but you know, the tour from last year was like almost a 1+ year process of putting it all together and whatnot. But yeah, it's fun. In the electronic world, it is definitely over the top and maximalist and everything. And the artists that I look up to, I'm always like, I want to make a show like that. So it's fun to just get a bunch of people together and create like a very memorable experience, you know, especially because it's electronic music, especially because I don't have like a band or anything. I'm not singing. It's very experiential and very like, I don't know, you just want to make like an unforgettable night basically for your fans at the end of the day. That's kind of like the standard and bar that I adhere to. Yeah. Obviously DJing culture has changed so differently in the last couple of years with TikTok, with mashups getting like a whole new life.
Yeah.
the cross-cultural mashups and like mixes, whether it's like Arabic music with EDM or whether it's someone like an Indo Warehouse, you know, all these different Habibi beats, who's like, there are people that are owning these like cultural niches and figuring out a way to like build their own audience. And you coming from like a traditional route of how you got here, like, how do you see all of this? Like, how do you see like where it's kind of heading right now in terms of this scene?
DJing is taking existing songs and doing something creative with it, be it mixes, blends, mashups, remixes. But then there's someone who like made that song from scratch, you know?
Yeah.
So those are two different things. I feel like I exist somewhere in between because I
Yeah.
do come from like band world, I come from orchestra world, I come from composition world. So I love like making something. I like making the music. And then when you perform it, you kind of, I think the goal for a lot of electronic artists, especially my personal favorite electronic artists, is like the way you do it live needs to feel different from what you hear on Spotify. Sometimes critics like to be quick to be like, oh, like this is just a Spotify DJ or he's just an iPod DJ or whatever. And there are definitely artists like that where like maybe you go see them and it's like literally the same thing as the Spotify version. I think for me, when I go see an artist like Odessa or Porter Robinson, what I love is like they have what are called in electronic world, they're called VIPs. A VIP stands for variance in production.
Yeah.
So like, for example, when you come to see me do Indian Summer, you're not getting the Spotify version. You're getting a version that is longer. There's an extended intro. There's different drums. I'm like playing the synths. I'm playing the vocal chops and whatnot live. You're getting a whole different experience. So I like bridging that gap of all right, well here I wrote the song, but now I'm going to deliver it to you in like a whole different way. So again, I live somewhere in between those two worlds. I think with the scene, especially for South Asian artists and mixers and DJs and curators and whatnot, like it's cool to see all these different DJ collectives, of course. I see Indo Warehouse blowing up and becoming this global tour de force. It's cool to see people experiencing these new cultural niches for sure. I feel like it can only get bigger and bigger. I'm maybe not exactly in that world, but kind of adjacent to it. I've always seen myself more as like a producer. That's kind of like the first thing I would put if someone were to describe me at the end of the day. Like even the record that I'm putting out next week has an emphasis on songwriting and production and lyricism. And I think those things are super different from like, all right, how can we blend Arabic music with Hindi music with like a hip hop beat? That's like a different kind of like concept.
Yeah.
That said, I do love DJing. I love being able to play my own music and blending it with edits or remixes of other people's music. I love so many different genres, house, trap, dub, doesn't matter. So when you come to see me DJ, you'll kind of get a taste of all that. But when you listen to my album, you'll kind of see my more, me as a songwriter, me as a lyricist, me as a producer. That's kind of what I'm trying to showcase on my records.
Yeah. Coming to like your original music, you mentioned, do you write your own songs as well in terms of the lyrics and everything?
Yeah. I do. Yeah.
What is the songwriting process for you like?
Yeah.
How do you start and how does it end up being what it is?
That's a really good question. So when you write a song, there's so many different ways to get a song off the ground. There's no right or wrong way to do that. I think there's the traditional like let's say the Taylor Swift method, which is you have a journal, you're writing lyrics every day. You're not thinking too much about melodies and chords, you're just writing lyrics, you're telling a story. Then you bring that to a studio, you whip out your guitar, your piano, you work with the producer, and then you add melody and chords and you write a song from there. So that's lyrics first, then music, right? Mm-hmm. I think for me, because I come from production, I always do like the beat first, or like usually it's drums and chords. I want to create like an atmosphere or a feeling. That's kind of like where I like to start. And when I work with songwriters or top liners, I get in the room with them and I play a bunch of my beats. I'll play like 10 beats and then we'll try to create melodies around that. And then over the last 2 years, I've been trying to bring like lyrical concepts. So even like my song Water Sign, which I just put out with Aluna, I met her 2 years ago and we had 2 sessions. A session for me is usually like 1 to 7 p.m. It's like a 6-hour block. When I met Aluna, we just chatted the whole time. We just talked about her history as a songwriter, as an artist, what it was like working with Disclosure and Sam Smith in the UK. The second day I played her a bunch of beats and we just tried some stuff, nothing really stuck. And then 8 months went by and we hit her up again like, hey, do you want to work again? Like I wanted to follow up basically, like it's like an email chain, you know, like circling back to this. And she thankfully was still interested. In our third session, which was almost a year later, I said, you know, when we first met, I remember you said you were a Cancer and I'm a Scorpio, and they're both water signs. What if we wrote a song about water signs? So it's fun to kind of go into the room and bring like a concept to start, right? And so with that song, she liked the concept, and then we kind of wrote like a song around that concept. I played her a bunch of beats. We picked a beat to write over, and then we wrote the song together, which was nice. I wouldn't call myself like a lyricist as my number one job title, but I've been working. I can write lyrics, and I've been working with a lot of people who help me shape my personal style and whatnot. But I think most DJ/producers work with other writers. Yeah. Sometimes that scale or that spectrum is sliding. Like sometimes the producer or the DJ might not even write a single lyric. Someone else is writing all of them, which is fine because the DJ/producer is focused on the music side.
Yeah.
I think for me specifically, for Jai Wolf, I've always wanted to have a hand in writing the lyrics. So all my songs have been like co-writes basically.
Yeah. One of the things you mentioned, we keep coming back to, is being Bengali and how much that means to you, and like kind of how much it has influenced you maybe at the beginning of your career when you were a young kid playing at these little parties your mom was hosting, or before going on Coachella, and how you made it a point to talk about it and be vocal on the internet. I remember you said this one thing where it's like, Bengalis get overlooked a lot of the times.
Yeah.
Like, how come people don't talk about us, or we're always second to like maybe India and like these other countries, and I feel like a lot of artists in the past too, like even though they're Indian or like have some sort of Indian heritage and upbringing, when they get into the mainstream, maybe they like kind of hold off on like being like, I am South Asian as like the first thing. Maybe it comes out like much later.
Yeah.
For a while, even when you were blowing up and kind of coming onto the scene, I don't know how vocal you were then about it. So I'm just curious to see like what, where does that come from? Why do you feel like that?
Yeah. I feel like you asked 3 questions, so I'm going to try to go through each one. So, okay, being Bengali and kind of in relation to being Indian or Pakistani or South Asian, or being Bengali in the context of what it means to be South Asian. I understand why we're always kind of listed last, because India is obviously the 1 billion population country. Like, obviously that's going to be the most common thing that the world is most, when they think brown person, they're going to think Indian person, right?
Yeah.
So that's fine. I just, in the context of why you bring this up, and I know why you bring this up, because last year at Coachella, there were 6 South Asian artists performing. I just thought it was funny that me and Joy Crooks felt a little bit like footnotes. I understand that it was a huge deal that Diljit was playing, for sure, megastar in India. I understand why that's like the headline, he's listed first. But I also think that like, it does say something that like, I played in 2017 Crickets. There's no PopShift or anything like that in 2017.
Yeah.
When did you start PopShift?
2019.
2 years later.
Yeah.
I always thought that was funny. The thing that I bring up a lot is that year in 2017, when I was on the lineup officially, Sweatshop Boys was playing, Nav was playing. And even while I was there, I was like, this is crazy. There is a Indian person, a Pakistani person, and a Bangladeshi person playing Coachella.
Yeah.
And there are no news articles about this.
Yeah.
Nothing. That's so crazy to think about. Because at that time, I don't think identity had reached the where it is today. Like, it is a topic that you can't like not talk about, I guess.
Yeah.
So last year when I would read these articles, I'd be like, it's funny that like I was here already, but it wasn't talked about then, and now I'm just like a footnote. And I was like, this should be a bigger deal. But I think that says a lot about just the general landscape of how things are talked about. I think for Bengali people, just the same way you want your representatives to represent you, there aren't the same amount of like Bengali journalists or anything like that to kind of like discuss some of the stuff happening. And there's also just a general cultural disconnect. I think the way information and the way culture flows top down, I think a lot of South Asian people are aware of the A-list of what's happening. Again, the Diljits, Bollywood, all that stuff is up there and hard to ignore in the community. Yeah. But then, as you know now, there is massive subcultures everywhere. Everything from things like No Nazar to Indo Warehouse to people like Saeed Das or Rahul or Parvi and Shreya Kal. Like I could list so many people now, but it's hard to kind of like take all that and funnel that as news, which is why I think something like PopShift and other media companies are like very important in telling the story.
Yeah.
But I think things are changing, of course. I think you can only hope for things to shift a bit more. I want to see more Bengalis win, of course. There's so many of us that are very talented and whatnot. And for a long time, it was just me. Now you have people like Saeed Das, you have his sister Parvi, you have Anik Khan, just endless, you know? Yeah. So I just want to see more wins, you know? I want to see the wins happen. I want to see them discussed too. That's kind of my whole thing about that last year.
The whole identity portion, right? Yeah. When you were blowing up and coming up, maybe did you feel like you needed to
talk about it, right?
Yeah, talk about it as much, or were you like, hey, maybe this is not something that I need to put out there right now?
I was neutral, because like, if you followed me on Instagram, you would know what I looked like. So I felt like that's enough. I think my whole thesis has been like my existence is inherently South Asian, inherently Bengali. You see me, I'm Bengali, right? Yeah. I don't have to make my music a certain way for me to be a Bangladeshi Bengali artist, right? It's just like I'm living, I'm breathing. All my entire story from birth to immigrating to America has informed all the choices to where I'm at today. And thus I am a South Asian diaspora artist, right? Yeah. So to me, that's enough. I don't have to speak beyond that. Mm-hmm. So I think for me, from starting Jai Wolf in 2014 to now, I never felt like I had to say more than that. If someone asked me in an interview, the story that I told you today, I've said so many times. Yeah. You could Google it. I think almost every article will have the same story. Oh, I thought I wanted to be Dire Wolf, and then I changed to Jai Wolf. Like, that's been said for so long. If you look for it, it was there. Yeah. I do think that a lot of people, not a misconception, but may assume that I was never vocal about it, which I think is completely untrue. Yeah. I also don't think anyone has to be vocal about it. You know, that's not like a requirement. Treading the topic today is very tricky, because I think that there are artists who that's like the first thing that they need to bring up.
Is I'm South Asian, or...
Yeah, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. I just think that like we do live in a time where like identity is such a hot thing that like it's a quick way to like open a door or whatever. But yeah, for a long time I didn't feel like it was important to bring up unless asked about. But I was somewhere in the middle. Yeah. I was not necessarily against it, you know?
Yeah. No, that's... just sorry I brought it up, but just wanted to kind of touch on that, because you know, there's artists like, for example, Charlie XCX, or you know, there's so many artists where I feel like maybe, you know, times are changing now, and which is like you said, people have to lead in with, hey, I'm South Asian, or I'm Asian, I'm this type of this is my heritage, and this is my background. But back then I feel like, you know, there were so many so few people maybe like putting that out there so much probably didn't need.
Totally. I mean, you have Tony Kunal and No Doubt. You have one of the guitarists in Sum 41, I'm forgetting his name. Yeah. There's so many examples of people like that who just like, even like Jay Sean, he just like, I think a lot of people thought he was black, you know, like it never really came up. And so it is sometimes difficult to talk about. I think also a lot of people, maybe from that era, maybe even someone like Charlie XCX, I don't want to necessarily speak for her, but a lot of people want to be known for the music and not who they are as a person or their identity. That's always secondary. So I understand that perspective for sure. I feel like I'm somewhere in the middle, and not just of opinion, but also chronologically, as someone who came in the 2010s, this is like after the artists that I mentioned, but before kind of like the way people speak about it now. The one thing I will say is that I want to say, when you look at like algorithms and what works, anytime I say that I'm Bangladeshi, the video will just perform better. It's very interesting. So in that regard, it's almost hard not to talk about it. And if you're a brand new artist, let's say you're starting from scratch, you're launching your project, it's like beyond showing your face, it's something that would just like get more eyes on you. So I understand why someone would do it. I would never knock on anyone who constantly talks about their identity or anything like that. I understand why it's like that. Sometimes it's like the machine favors stuff like that, you know? So it's a product of the game you have to play.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, even just from my perspective of doing PopShift, and you know, originally I was like, hey, I want to create this platform to put South Asian voices forward. But like after a while, even now, I'm like, maybe I'm boxing myself in a little bit, you know? It's like there's so many other cultures that I'm naturally curious about. Like, you know, if I'm just focusing on, you know, what I know and like my people, maybe that's not the way to grow either. So just questions about identity, and then also like the algorithm battle, right? It's like you're saying these words, you're like saying South Asian so many times, or like and yeah, it does go viral when you're saying it, but then ultimately, like when you look at the art and like the content that you're putting out, it's like, man, like, you know, it just sounds like this repetitive
100%,
like preaching thing.
Yeah, it's hard to tread that. Even I find it difficult to tread that too, because I've posted stuff, let's say on TikTok, where it's like, here's the art, here's the music. There's no what's it called? I'm just posting it. I'm not gonna like talk about it or anything. It's just like a clip from a video or a live performance or whatever, and then it just flops. But then if I gussy it up, I'm like, whoa, this Bangladeshi DJ just did XYZ.
It'll go crazy.
And it will go, because it's framed in a certain way. I always think about that. About what I call bait. Unfortunately, identity bait works. And so it just depends like how you want to play that. Like it is really hard to have people come consume your art totally organically without the context of bait. Even bait beyond identity. Like I'll give a quick example. I call this hyperbole bait. Like, like for example, the Song of the Summer thing. That's what I call a hyperbole bait. You use that to trick people into engaging. It's also like rage bait almost. It's kind of like adjacent to that.
Yeah, it's like, this is the Song of the Summer, and then you play the song type of thing.
Yeah.
How do your parents feel about all of this? I saw them at the concert last year.
Yeah.
You know, they're there watching, supporting you. How do they feel about where you're at right now and what you've become?
I'd like to think they're proud. It's been a long journey for sure. I love when they come to the shows. They have such a good time. You know, they came to all the New York ones when I would do New York. So, you know, Rough Trade, Bowery Ballroom, Terminal 5, Brooklyn Mirage. And then I think as the shows got bigger in LA, they started to come out here. So they came to the Shrine in 2019. And they came to the Greek last year, which was just like super special for them. Like, I mean, the craziest thing about that night is that Priyanka Chopra was there.
Yeah.
I don't know if you saw, but like that was, came out of nowhere. I mean, the way that happened was, you know who Frankie Jonas is?
What, Joe Jonas's brother?
So do you know there's a fourth Jonas brother?
No.
So did you ever watch Disney Channel growing up? Remember like Bonus Jonas? No?
No? I did watch Disney Channel growing up, but I'm not that deep into it. Yeah.
So, the Jonas Brothers. Everyone knows the Jonas Brothers. They have a fourth brother, Frankie Jonas. I remember growing up, they would showcase him. He was just like a kid. But I think he started showing up on my TikTok feed a couple of years ago. And I thought it was funny, so I followed him. And he followed me back. We never really engaged too much, but I saw that he would like interact with, maybe like a couple of my videos, whatever. So when we were getting ready for tour last year, I DM'd him and I was like, hey man, like I'm coming to LA, like I'd love to invite you to the show. He's like, oh, like I was planning to come, like thank you so much. I was like, yeah, like here a couple of tickets, 2 tickets, right? So day of show, I wake up to a text. He's like, hey man, Pri wants to come. And I was like, holy shit, dude, like Priyanka Chopra might come to the show. It's like crazy thing to wrap my head around. So I text him like, oh cool, like let me connect you with my team. We'll make sure you guys are escorted in, which is just insane. And you know, I've been in so many situations where even I promised to go to something and I might last minute flake. Just because like I feel less guilty about it as an adult because life is just whatever. Like So I understand. I understand if someone says I'm coming and they don't. So the whole day I'm like, ain't no way. No way Priyanka Chopra is coming to the show tonight. She came to the show, which is so insane. And even then, I knew she was there. Like, I think I got a text from him like, hey, like, we're pulling up. Had my team grab them and everything, make sure they're sorted in a safe area in the venue. And I was like, she's gonna leave halfway. Because I do that sometimes. If I go see a show, again, I'm 33, I'm a little older, I got a bedtime.
Yeah.
I'm like, all right, let me see a little bit. I'll put it on my story. I came to support whoever I want to see. I'll go to sleep. She stayed the whole time. And even then, I was like, all right, they're probably just going to dip.
Yeah.
So the whole time, I'm just like, there's not going to be an interaction. It's just like, she's there. Maybe she'll see half of it, all of it, whatever. But at some point, she's going home, and I'm not going to see her. But they were fully down to come say hi after. So Frankie brought her. She got to meet my parents and everything. That was one of the most surreal moments of my life because, I mean, you know, she's a mega Bollywood movie star and she's like talking to my mom and dad. That's such a crazy kind of concept, especially just knowing that my parents are just hardworking Bangladeshi immigrants.
Yeah.
And now they're talking to the biggest Bollywood star on the planet. Just so surreal to kind of take that in the moment. And the thing that I won't forget is how nice she was. I think that with celebrities, obviously it will always depend on the moment you catch them. You'll hear stories about celebrities being rude or whatever. And I had no expectations. In fact, I was like, hey, if she's cold, I get it. She's a fucking A-list or whatever.
Yeah.
She was so sweet, like incredibly sweet. And just like magnetic and charming and whatnot. And the way she spoke to my mom, just how gentle she was with her and how like welcoming she was, especially because, you know, this is like my backstage area, but you know, she's her own star in her own right. So she has her own personal space and everything. The fact that she was like taking selfies with my mom and everything. Even I had to like prep my mom. Like I was like, Mom, like I think Priyanka Chopra might show up tonight. I need you to be cool. And like, she was so excited. And my mom, I love her, but she can get like, you know, overexcited when something's happening or when she's at my show. So, but she was so cool. Like she took photos with everybody and she made time for us. That's something that you just don't forget. Yeah. So yeah, just very, very surreal moment. And all through TikTok too. Like it's the fact that like followed a Jonas Brother on TikTok, parents met Priyanka Chopra. That's the meme.
That's awesome. What does Jai Wolf do? What does Sajeeb do when he's not doing music? What do you like to do? What are your hobbies? How do you spend your time? What do you do?
I play a lot of video games. I don't think a lot of people know me as like a big gamer. I'm not very outward with it, like on socials or anything, but I actually do play a lot of video games. I don't play like the Fortnite, Valorant, multiplayer type games. I play a lot of like solo adventure games, so Red Dead 2, Star Wars like Jedi Survivor, Witcher 3, Ghost of Tsushima, stuff like Cyberpunk. Like I love games like that, open world games.
Yeah.
Big gamer. I love movies. I see at least one movie a month or something like that. I think a lot of my music is inspired by movies. So I think a lot of my friends also know me as like big movie guy.
Yeah, I remember you shared a lot of Dune memes, right? When like Dune 2 came out.
I can't believe Dune 2 came out this year. That's crazy to me. It's been a long fucking year. No, I loved Dune 2. It was one of the best IMAX movie experiences I've ever had since like Lord of the Rings when I was a kid. I took up like boxing a couple years ago, just for my health basically. I haven't gone in a while, but I was going pretty consistently from 22 to now, almost like 3 years straight. Music takes up a lot of your life when you're like touring and working on stuff. It's sometimes hard to separate your personal life from your career. It's kind of like one and the same. And I mean, you work in a creative medium, sometimes the hours they go late into the night or the weekends or whatever, especially last year when we were working on the tour. I mean, it's just feel like, there's 24 hours in a day, working like 12 to 16 hours sometimes, like as soon as you wake up and then all the way to going to bed. So it can get kind of hectic and you do have to like try to find time for yourself to completely separate yourself from career stuff.
Last question, and maybe an important one for people watching.
Sure.
Is if there's a kid that's at home watching this, inspired by you, came to your show, wants to be a musician, wants to be a DJ, like what's one piece of advice that you would give to them on, because not everything might work out like it did for you, right? Like not everything might be like, boom, you do this, you get this viral video and you blow up,
100%. 100%. My best advice is to just keep going. I think that if you're like a diaspora kid, your family immigrated to the US, you already have that base level of like, your parents might not support you if you are pursuing something in the arts, especially music. So that's already your first hurdle. And that's a tough one to get over, especially if you don't have familial support. The best way to get over that is finding like-minded people like yourself. I think for me, like my SoundCloud community of my friends who had the same goals and dreams and aspirations as myself, like that helped a lot. Because for a long time I was like, I don't really know anyone, like it's just me, right? Having a community that has like the same hopes, dreams, desires as you will help a lot, especially if you don't have that familial support. After that, the thing that becomes tough is that you'll experience so many no's in your life. Even to this day, it might not seem like it because what you see on social media is not truly representative of what might be happening behind the scenes, but to this day, I still get no's. And you have to go through 9,999 whatever no's to get that one yes. This is applicable in so many different places, be it collaborators, shows, opportunities. I've gotten so many no's in my life. Even earlier in our conversation, I mentioned emailing Webster Hall, hey, can I open for this artist, and getting a no. Even like, I think even we reached out to a Luna's team like 5 years ago and I got a no. Mm-hmm. But now I have a song with her because we were persistent, we just kept going, So you're gonna experience a lot of that, like an ungodly amount, to the point where you're gonna wanna quit. So my best advice is don't quit. It's really just like, it's expected. And every person that you look up to has experienced more no's than what you see online.
Yeah.
If you look up to Tyler, the Creator, Taylor Swift, Olivia Rodrigo, whatever, they have probably gotten so many no's that you just are not aware about because all you see online are all the yeses. I'd like to think that being resilient is the thing that will get you so far, sometimes even more than being talented. Like you could be the most talented person in the world. If you do not have resilience, you're just not gonna go as far as someone who does have that resilience. So if you truly believe in what you're doing, if you believe in the art that you're making, please don't give up. I think the world needs more South Asian creators. Like I mentioned, this new generation gets me so excited because every time I'm scrolling on TikTok, I see someone brand new that I could not even imagine would exist just even like 5 years ago, just even in like, it's about to be 2025, even in 2020, there were not as many artists that I could list right now just 5 years ago. Yeah. So the world needs more of you. Please don't give up. Keep going. Don't give up. Yeah. Just stay strong. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for giving us your time.
Of course.
And that concludes my interview with electronic artist, DJ, and music producer, Jai Wolf. Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode of Scatterbrain Podcast, presented by PopShift. I'm your host, Raghu. I'll see you next week.